Hi, welcome to Finite Power videos. This is DC here. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the access rights in secure memory card AT88SC153, and this is the part 2. In the part 1 we were discussing about the access rights. There are 8 bits in the access rights, and each bit controls a specific feature of the card. In the last video I showed you how to use the write password enable bit. This bit controls whether the password verification required or not. We also saw how to restrict read access, and we saw how to select the password. It is the password select bit. In this video I'm going to show you how to use the write lock mode, the modify forbidden bit, and the program only. So the simplest of this is the modify forbidden mode. If this bit is set to 0, the user zone becomes read only. You cannot modify. And again, this feature will be useful only after we personalize. But I'm going to show you that how exactly this bit works. This feature, when this bit is set to 0, this prevents user from changing the bit from 0 to 1. Now we can use this feature to create one-time programmable memory, which is used in a ticketing system. And if you have seen my earlier videos on SC102, that card had a feature. It's called as the erase or write mode. We're also going to see this write lock mode. So this bit, you can lock the first 8 bytes of the memory. Now again, this will be like a one-way locking. If the lock bit is set to 0, you cannot set that to 1. We are not going to cover the authentication because there are few things and a few issues or some requirements to use this authentication. Probably I would like to mention this in a later part of the videos. So I have connected my AT88U with the card inserted, and the version of the software is 1.93. We have been using this card in my previous videos also, but I have made some changes here, removed all this the access right bits. Now I'm going to use the WLM. This is the write, the modification prohibited. So this is MDF. In order to change the value of access rights, we had to first verify ourselves with the secure password, which in my case is 454545. Verify. As soon as you verify, you can read the values of other password as well. Now I'm going to try this with the user zone 0. Set this bit MDF bit enable and write. To make sure the write is successful, hit a read button. We can see these bits are what we want. Now the effect of changing this bit will be available immediately. You don't have to reset or restart the tag. Now what we have done is we have made the modification prohibited for zone 0. If you try to go and modify, say modify the last bit, set to 111111, and say write. Now the write is successful here. This because this is what we get. We have discussed this in my previous videos. If you try to read, we got back the old value. So this shows that a zone can be made read only with this bit, but you have to make sure you first write all the required data to zone 1, 2, 3, and then you set that bit. So I'm going to try the same thing for the zone AR1 so that you're comfortable with this feature. Enable this and write, and if you try to go on modify, write, and try to read, you got back this old value. So now you know how to make the zone data read only. I'm going to reset this back. We are still authenticated with the the secure code. I'm going to write. So we are back to everything cleared. So there's no kind of verification or a protection set in this card now. So next I'm going to show you how to use the program only bit. The documentation says you can change the bit from 1 to 0 but never from 0 to 1. I'm going to modify. We already have some bytes set to 0, so I'm going to change this to FF and make sure the write is successful. If you try to read, so you can see that we are able to change from zeros to 1. Okay, I'm going to set this bit PGO enabled, and if you try to change, the byte number 2 here has got the value set to zeros. I'm going to change this to just a 1. I'm going to change just 1 bit of this byte and give a write, and if you try to read, you can see that it has gone back to zeros. So how about taking this, the third byte, which is 10, I want to make 00. So here it was the bits were 1, it was like this, and now my new value will be making all the 8 bits as zeros. Now write. So it's not here. Yeah, I can try here. Okay, so if you write and say read, you can see that we are able to set from 1 to 0. I think that's all it is. I'm going to try once again here. So we'll see what's the settings for the zone 1. I'm going to enable that, write, then go back to zone 1. So first I'm going to set, or probably can play with this one. So we have B0, so which is B is 1 1 0 0 and all zeros. I'm going to try to make this as B1 1 1 0 0, and sorry, the 1 1 is not the right one. So I'm going to make this bit from B0 to B1. So I'm trying to change the bit from 0 to 1 and see whether if it's possible or not. Change this to 1 and say write, and if you try to read, you got back this 0. So we are not able to change from 0 to 1. Next I'm going to show you how to use this write lock mode. So the description says with this mode, the very first byte of each zone will control the access rights of the first 8 bytes. And one more thing you remember here, if you go to page number 9, now what it says is when the card is in the write lock mode, any write operation can write only a single byte. You cannot write more than 1 byte. So it's mentioned here, only 1 byte of a page can be written at a time. So even if you try to write say 10 bytes, say starting from address 0, only the first byte is written. So in order to do this byte single byte writing, I've introduced this section called write X number of bytes. So now you can write just a few bytes of a zone. So for example, if I want to, probably I can show you how that section works. I'm going to revert back right and right. So now we have a condition where no password verification is required. So the read and write are accessible, are able, you can do it. So I want to copy, say change these 4 bytes to 10, 11, 12 and 13, and the user interface is not very this is not the best interface. You have to choose the byte address. Now the byte address of the zone data starts from 0. This is the byte address 0 of zone 0. This also address 0 and this also address 0. Now I want to copy the 4 bytes from here. So you have to count the address. It's 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So I want to transfer from address 4 and I want to transfer the 4 bytes. So then it will be 4 bytes. So if you give a write, you can see the command here. So here it is, the starting address is 4 and you're passing the 4 bytes. Now we are able to write just a part of the user zone. Before this section, the only way to write is to write everything, all the 64 bytes starting from address 0. But with this section you can write a section of the zone. So we have written, if you want to read, now you can just delete this probably and try to read this entire section. You can see that our write 4 bytes was successful. So now we are going to see how to use the write lock mode enabled. Now you have to understand the importance of the very first byte of all the 3 zones. The first byte here, the first byte here, as well as here. Now this byte is going to act as a locking bits. If you know about the MIFARE ultralight tags or any other tags that allows you to lock a block of page, so it's something very similar to that. Now the first byte will behave as a locking bits. So there are only 8 bits here, so you can lock only the first 8 bytes of the zone. So the first 8 bytes over here, the first 8 bytes of the zone here, as well as the 8 bytes in the other zone. So I have provided a section. So this decodes the first byte in binary, and sometimes you might get confused with the value you see here and the bits here. So this is in binary. Say what you see here is from the address 0 is the first bit. The first bit is the lower bit, the LSB of the byte. So here you see in hex, the first bit here is the MSB. So you have to get used to this. Now the settings I have here doesn't need any password verification, so I can go and modify. This section I can use to modify the very first byte. So play with that. If you give a read command, you can see the command is generated to read just the 1 byte from address 0. If you want the lowest bit of this byte, if you want to set that to 0, you can control that with these checkboxes and say write, and when you refresh you can see that the 2 bits here, these are lower bits, so that's why it has gone here. Now you have to keep in mind the value you see here is in the MSB, in the reverse order of these bits. Say what I mean here is, so here I'm going to put the binary equivalent of these bits. If the bit is 1, the corresponding checkbox is ticked here. So untick means it's bit 0. if you convert this, the first byte FC into binary, this is what we do most of the time. We convert the first nibble and the second one here. So this is F and C. So you have to reverse these bits. So this is the lowest bit and this is the highest bit. So in the memory of this card, the lowest bit is stored first. It's in the lowest bit order. Now when you reverse this hex bit, you will get back 00101110. So likewise, you can change the value of the bytes 0 in all the 3 user zones using this corresponding sections. So I'm going to set this back. Okay. So first I'm going to enable the write lock mode for the user zone 0 and write. Now I cannot write here because to make changes for this section I must first authenticate or verify, sorry, not authentication, it's a verification of the password. So verify, then I'm going to enable this write locking for zone 0. If you read, it is set. Now I'm going to just reset this tag by clicking on the select tag. So with this enabled, the first byte will now act as a lock bits. Now when the bit is 0, the corresponding byte is locked. Now in this case all the bits are still 1, so I can go and modify any of these 8 bytes. So I'm going to modify the second byte, say 0 1, and I'm going to write just the byte using this section. If you try to read, you can see that you are able to modify the second byte. So I'm going to modify a few more bytes here, say 02, 03, 04, 05. So I'm going to modify or save the changes made to byte address 2 and 4 bytes from there, right? Yeah, sorry, I was wrong here. Now I think I mentioned this before. When this write mode is enabled, you cannot write more than 1 byte at a time. Even if you want to modify a byte at this address, you have to modify only that specific address. Now that's one thing I have to keep in mind, because that's what the documentation says as well. Now I'm going to try this again. So I'm going to modify this bit, say 03. So starting from address 3, I'm going to modify just 1 byte. Read, you can see that's modified. Now I'm able to modify because none of this bit is set to 0. Now I want to prevent anybody changing these 3 bytes. So I'm going to remove the bit or change the bit from 1 to 0 for address 0, 1, 2 and write. If you read, you can see that the bit pattern has changed. So now you go and I'm going to modify this to say F1. Clear this. So address 1 and length 1, right? And if you try to read, so we have got F1 here. If you try to read, you got back the old value 0, 1. So you cannot modify the byte at address 2 because we have locked it. However, if you keep this as it is now, anybody can go and modify, remove this, modify the byte 0 and remove the lock bits. So in order to prevent somebody from changing the lock bits, I'm going to make even the address 0 byte, I'm also going to lock it. So remove this tick box. This bit corresponds to the first byte itself. So go and write. Okay. Now I have logged the first 4 bytes here. If you try to modify, so go and modify this byte 4. Sorry, byte at 4 is in the sense an address 3, right? And if you try to read, you can't. Going to modify this 5th byte, set that to 55, right? If you try to read, you can see that you are still able to write the address 5. So the same thing applies in all the zones. So if you want to enable the lock mode, you have to go here and set the corresponding bit to enable this bit and enable this bit. So from this point on, all the 3 zones have the first byte controls the locking of the first 8 bytes. So once you have played with this, you can go and remove this this flag, right? So from this point on, you can go and modify. So I'm going to fill with the FFs and say right. Oh, sorry, something missing here. Could be because, yeah, could verify. Not sure the right is done. No, the right is not. It was not verified. Okay. So read. So I'm going to write. That's fine. I'm going to, if you try to fill it and write and say read, yeah. So now we are back to all the flags removed. You can, so none of these user zones are protected. You can go and modify. So I think that's all we got in this video. So thanks for watching. I will see you in my next video on authentication.